Performance advertisers who optimize for purchases. You already know your costs are going to skyrocket in November. In this episode of the Paid Traffic Forecast, we're going to go through exactly what you can expect from the forecast, the hot spots and cold spots you and your team need to pay attention to, what their projection models say is likely to happen to your P&L based off what you focus on, and the 3 things you can do to maximize your results despite rising costs. More on that right after this. Hey there, and welcome to the November 2025 Paid Traffic Forecast for Purchase Advertisers. I'm John Belcher, the founder here at Decyphered. That's Ross Pietersen, the head of media buying. And we're excited to show you what's around the corner for your campaigns in the month of November. Quickly to explain what we do here at Decyphered, we help our clients understand and win at the scaling game. Paid traffic is a game where you have to focus on the right things to unlock to your next level of scale. And one of the things we found is the key to long-term success is understanding your cost environment. It has a huge impact on results, and that's exactly why we made this forecast. In this episode, we're going to go over 4 things. The first one is a November outlook, what the last 5 years tells us is likely in store for you as a purchase advertiser. The second, Ross is going to walk you through the hot spots and cold spots, the dates you need to pay attention to, and the do's and don'ts on each of those periods. Then I'm going to walk you through the projection models, what our projections say is likely to happen to your P&L based on what you focus on. And then finally, we're going to talk about the cost environment playbook. Every month, I try and give you 3 actions you can take to maximize your results and or prepare for the future. So diving into the November outlook, quickly to explain how I built this forecast, my job is to work with our clients to develop a projection for what's going to happen to their P&L. And I wanted to have a really clear model to do this. So I went and studied the 5-year historicals on Meta for CPMs, analyzing hundreds of millions of dollars in spend for the 4 major conversion types. I developed a projection model and tested it and found we could project within about 5% of actuals for clients spending $1 million a month or more in ad spend. What's important for you to understand is while we use Facebook as our data set, we found these percentages apply across platforms, very similar behavior, Meta, Google native, and it's starting to apply to AppLovin as more advertisers are coming on. What's really important for you to understand is this is a forecast, not a prophecy. History tells us what is likely to happen, but things can shift depending on the year. So our goal is to give you an understanding of what's likely around the corner so you can be paying attention to the right things and can adjust based off what this year's data presents us. People like to call me Johnny Raincloud because I always focus on the worst, and I do that intentionally. I've developed 3 different scenarios for our projection models, a worst case, a median case, and a best case. And what I'm looking at is month over month change. I want to understand what is likely to happen between October and November. This forecast, all we're going to show you is the worst case scenario, because if we prepare for the worst case, we can only be surprised by overperforming those results. So the worst case scenario for you as a performance advertiser for purchases between October and November, we could see a 51% increase in your cost per optimized event. So whether you're optimizing for purchases from e-com, if you're doing something that's custom, these are those types of things you're expecting to see that cost per purchase to go up in the worst case scenario, 51%, which is just a crazy amount. Every other month is way less than this, but this is that expectation for the month of November. So we're going to talk about how you deal with this. But what's really important for you to understand is that 51% increase is important for that P&L planning on the macro side, but it's not very useful on a day-to-day basis. Your media buying team needs to be aware of the micro changes that are going to happen throughout the month. And that's why I asked Ross to go through and help me prepare this forecast that looks at CPM changes on a daily basis. And so this is what the month of November looks like. It's crazy. And we're going to talk through the hot spots and the cold spots to help you guys understand the dates you have to pay attention to, the do's and the don'ts. So Ross, I'm going to let you take it away. Let's dive into the hot spots and cold spots.
So let's look just quickly. Hotspots and cold spots is a term we use for these short-term cost swings. So a hotspot is a rapid cost spike and a cold spot is a rapid cost drop. So these are things that create high volatility and they're things you're going to need to manage. They're not things you can fix. So let me just preface before we go into that. Let's go and look at our 3 important dates. The first being the 31st of October. As we come into the month is a cold spot. And then we start the upward climb from the 9th of November. And then we finish out with a cold spot on the 30th of November. Now let's get some context of what that looks like. Coming into the beginning of the month, you can see there's this really steep slope. We're going to have some massive overspend there, and we'll get into the details. things might look good right in the beginning, first week or so of the month, and then you're hitting an upwards trajectory all the way from there. Massive cost spike on the 9th, all the way till the end, where we're seeing on the 30th, there's some big reprieve and there's a cold spot right at the end of the month. And then we head into December. Let's take a look at what typically happens in a cold spot scenario. So what happens is, as the cold spot happens, you're going to have some huge budget overspend. And what this causes is massive instability, no matter what kind of advertiser you're in. So let's take a look at a real world example. So when I'm running media for clients in the agency here, we're tracking budget utilization on a daily basis. So you'll see here's a screenshot where we've got all our campaigns running and we've got what we've set, what we want the ad platform to be running at, and what actually was spent. So let's put this in an example. If you were wanting to spend $100 a day, what you're seeing here is overspend. We've got 130% spend. So that would be, if you're spending $100, there's $130 of spend. So what's happening here is there's this massive cost drop in the environment. All of a sudden, massive push in budget causes major instability. You're going to have this major overspend, and you can see everywhere where it's orange, we've got quite a significant overspend. So these are the do's and don'ts when we're handling cold spots. Again, as I said in the beginning, these are things you need to manage. They're not things that you can change. Remember, we've got 2 in the month of November, the 31st right in the beginning of October and right at the end. What we want to try and do is avoid extending the recovery period and completely ruining our account stability. So 2 things all advertisers should be doing. Keep an eye on your overspend. So you should be monitoring your budgets, how much you've set and how much you're using. If you're an internal team, communicate with your team. If you have clients and you're an agency, communicate with your clients nonetheless. There's some up and coming chops. 2 things you don't want to do: make drastic budget changes. You don't want to be shaking the boat, making big changes in this point of transition. And the other thing you don't want to do is rescale old performers too quickly, especially in this point of transition. Your job is to stabilize the ship. If you use cost controls, bid caps, cost caps, target ROAS, those kinds of things, also really bad move to be changing bids during this transition period. Do not do that. You're changing and creating even more instability in transition.
One thing, Ross, I want to jump in here really quickly is this 4th point: don't rescale old performers too quickly. For those of you that lead media buying teams, this point is in here because I've made this mistake where we've been choked out on spend for a long time. And what happens is me trying to make up those deltas will say, hey, Ross, go relaunch these ads that were performing now that we've got some reprieve, and start them at the budgets that they were at. So as an example, if we do this with target CPA campaigns on Google Demand Gen, they get choked out, and then we relaunch things. And I go, hey, man, this was at $2,500 a day. Just relaunch it there. It performs horribly because it's a net new ad that's starting at this higher level. If you're going to go relaunch things, start them. We have what we call our scaling ladder. They start here and then we work our way up. That's what Ross and I have gotten to that point, is like, start at the bottom, work our way up. And then a part of the communication to clients is, hey, we're going to be able to rescale some of the stuff that dropped off, but it's going to take us a week to get it back up to that point that it was performing at. It's really important that you have an understanding of cycles, how long things are going to take, and don't try and just start stuff where they were at. It just never ends up well.
Exactly. All right. So let's go ahead and to look, what does a hotspot feel like? As we head into it, you're going to start seeing your cost per purchase go up. You're going to start seeing underspend. Costs are increasing at this time. So as we said, around the 9th, you're going to start feeling the squeeze. And if you don't have cost controls, you'll just start seeing underspend. If you have cost controls, you may start seeing complete spend stoppage. We're going to take a look at what that looks like right now in a real world example. So on the left-hand side, you'll see this is a sort of day over day change. And you'll see there's a negative difference. So we've got negative 14%, negative 21%. So that's where our budget for Facebook on that day was a particular budget. And we were significantly underspending, which meant we were going into a higher cost environment. We were getting squeezed out because there's some significant competition. CPM is rising, and we couldn't spend our entire budget. On the right-hand side, here's a real-world example of just a day-over-day change. So this is a snapshot of the Google Demand Gen campaign, where 24 hours later, we took the snapshot. So what you can see here is we set a budget of, let's say, $1,000 a day, and you're seeing here in the worst case scenario, only 36% of that budget was actually spent. That's quite severe. And this is over a 24-hour period. So everything was fine the day before. All of a sudden this happened. And this is a huge indicator for me knowing that cost environment's changed. I then indicated John and the client, look, things are changing. And this is my immediate indicator of how this happens. Let's take a quick...
One thing, just to quickly note on this, there's no cost controls on our Facebook campaigns. They're max conversions. And so that's why we're seeing 14, 20% underspends. These are cost controlled campaigns. And that's why Ross made that distinction. You're going to see a more dramatic underspend. And in some cases, you're going to see stuff fall off completely. That's where this comes in. And why it's important for you to note the difference is uncontrolled, it's going to underspend. Cost control is going to be massive underspend.
Exactly. Remember, you're using cost controls to put those guardrails to stay within your costs. Okay, let's go over some do's and don'ts in our hotspot. We've got the big one on the 9th of November, and we go all the way uphill right to Black Friday, Cyber Monday at the end of the month. But what we want to try and avoid here is wasting our budget and breaking stability in our account. As I said before, with a cold spot, we need to be monitoring underspend. That's our first indicator of things are changing. Again, communicating with your teams, communicating with your clients. Big deal here. This is a cycle you're going through. End of the day, your job is to make sure that everyone knows what's happening, because these are things you can't change. You have to manage them. Okay. And again, you don't want to be making big, drastic budget changes in this transition period. And the last two things for those cost control advertisers, raising those bids. Again, you're adding additional volatility and trying to move the target during a change of transition. Really bad idea. And the last important point, which we'll illustrate now, is forgetting only your strong ads are going to deliver. And if we go back one slide, you'll see there are a whole bunch of ads that are underspending, and we've got one ad in the green which continues to deliver. And that ad is a really strong ad. It continues to perform even in high cost environments. So understanding that if you've got a bunch of ads delivering at a certain volume, most of them are likely going to fall off, but only the ones that are your really strong ones that have really good costs, can compete, have high engagement. Those are the ones that are going to stick around. And unfortunately, in a perfect world, all of our ads are going to perform in that level, but it's just not like that. But that's a key indicator here, is only your strong ads are really going to survive.
Yep. And from, once again, the managerial strategic perspective, what's important, and the reason Ross and I look at this stuff on a regular basis together, is I have to be notifying clients, hey, we're seeing this volatility that's coming up, and we're about to lose this ad entirely. So let's say this is running at $2,000 a day. Let's say they're all running at $2,000 a day. We're going from 10 grand. Obviously, we're starting to see budget underspend, and then this one's going to completely drop off. So we're going to have $2,000 just completely out. So now we're down from 10 grand to a percentage of 10 grand to losing this one entirely. That amount that you're able to push out just continues to drop. And so it's really important to explain there's nothing we can do here, right? We're just going to get choked out on these campaigns unless we want to go start upping budgets and bids, which we just talked about are terrible things to do. You're just going to throw everything out of whack. It's just important to see these things so you can communicate what's taking place and you can work from there. Ross, thanks for walking us through the hot spots and the cold spots. Let's talk really quickly about the seasonal changes.
So we always look every month, what are the big things that are changing that potentially affect all advertisers? And these are things where we're seeing, campaigns from elections, big brand buys, people buying on CPMs, where you're trying to get massive exposure. And the reason why that impacts all of us is because they're buying up all these impressions, and there are less impressions available for us performance advertisers. So these are things that affect all of us, but we're trying to indicate them as just potentials that could create extra volatility. So let's have a look what we look like in November. We have a couple here. One, we've got an election early in the month. Just keep an eye on that one. That may or may not affect you. And then right at the end of the month, we've got our normal end of month squeeze where there's a big dump. But at the end of the day, we also have, it's November, it's Q4, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And just something to note about Black Friday, Cyber Monday this year is that normally we found that to be a little bit earlier in the month, around the 24th, but it is later this month. So it's something to just take into consideration, that it is shifted and may cause some different volatility.
Awesome. Thanks, Ross, for walking us through that. Really helpful to know. If you have any questions on hotspots, cold spots, seasonal stuff, leave them down below, and Ross and I will make sure that we adjust our information on a monthly basis. All right, let's dive into the projection models. So once again, the reason that I put together projections for our clients, they want to know what's going to happen to the P&L, but what's important for us is we're giving them options. What can we depending on what we focus on is going to determine the impact on the P&L. So what I'm trying to view with projections is what is the cost environment going to mean for our P&L? A couple variables I have to consider: the number of selling days. So November has one fewer selling days than October. So that's obviously going to impact our overall performance. And then secondarily, conversion rate changes. If you experience a conversion rate change between the month of November and October, whether it's positive or negative, you need to factor that into your projections. It's going to be really important. It's going to make a massive difference in your overall performance. The goal of the projection exercise is to have a result for our evergreen production. What can we expect of our evergreen proven base of campaigns to produce depending on what we focus on? And then that's going to leave us with a conclusion. We're either going to have a delta, we're going to have a surplus, or things are going to be about the same. And that's going to determine the actions that we take, what we focus on, and how risky those things can be. So I know you as a performance advertiser do not care about CPMs. You care about CPAs and ROAS. And I totally understand that, but you should care about CPMs, and here's why. In the month of October, if you spend $100,000, you're going to reach X amount of people. In the month of November, if you spend that same $100,000, you're going to reach 51% worst case fewer people with that same amount of ad spend. And the reason that's important is most people think that their sales funnel starts with their landing page and then the add to cart rate and the purchase. But what really happens, your funnel starts at the impression level. And so the number of impressions, your CTRs probably aren't going to change much, which means you have fewer clicks, fewer page views, fewer add to carts, fewer purchases, unless you have a massive conversion rate change. And so the reason you need to care about CPMs as a performance advertiser is when you get fewer people to see your ads, you're going to have fewer sales, which means your ROI is going to be worse. That's the bottom line. So my projection exercise, I take the October production and come in and plug this in. So let's say we spend $100,000. We made 1,000 sales at $100 CPA. Let's say our AOV is $150. Total revenue is $150, and then ROAS is 1.5. So what I have to do is, first of all, factor in what's going to happen if we do the same amount of spend just by looking at the cost environment. Well, worst case, our CPAs are going to go up that 51%, which is massive. And so what we're going to be able to see here is off that same $100,000, we're only going to produce $99,000 of revenue. So we're at a 0.99 ROAS. That's just what's going to happen based off the cost environment if we change nothing else. If the client says, hey, we can't afford to drop sales volume, we're going to have to push more into ad spend. I call this peeing into the wind, because you're going to have to make up the delta from that cost change, and you're going to have to push way harder. So what you see here is this is not a 51% increase in spend. It's way more than that, because you're pushing higher into higher CPMs. So this model says that we'd have to spend $228,000 to generate the same 1,000 sales. Obviously, our CPA is more than double, which means our ROAS is going to go from a 1.5 down to a 0.66. That's crazy. But if they have to maintain volume, this is what they have to understand the impact is going to be. And then finally, if we want to maintain our cost per sale at $100, we are going to have to massively pull back on our spend to try and maintain these same economic levels. And best case scenario, we're only going to be able to spend about $44,000 to try and hit these same CPA targets, which means our ROAS is going to be the same, but we're almost going to drop $90,000 in revenue. And so we talk about conclusions here. We're going to, as we move into a higher cost environment, we're either going to lose revenue, profit, or both. And this is the delta you have to understand so you can go through and make these things up. This is the focus that we're allowing our clients to pick from. And then we can say, this is what we're expecting. Now we can talk about what would we need to do next to make up that delta. But at the end of the day, with this projection, we're obviously going to see massively higher costs and lower results. Our actions need to be focusing on making up this delta. And if we can prepare for the rest of Q4 as we work through this, we're going to do that. So that's what I want to kind of talk through now with our cost environment playbook. Every month, I'm going to try and give you 3 actions depending on the cost environment. Since we're in a high cost environment, we want to take low risk actions. We don't want to be putting out a bunch of new ads that are unproven angles. because not only are we heading into a higher cost environment, those have lower hit rates. That just ends up in being worse ROAS. So I want to walk you through three things that I would look to do with a business that's optimizing for e-commerce sale or for sales purchases. I give you a high lift play, a medium lift play, and a low lift play in regards to the amount of work that will be required for these. So I want to talk through strategic PR efforts, product feature sites, and then deploying proven angle iterations. And when I do this, I always try and use an example brand to give you a frame of reference that you can work on. So I'll explain where I found this brand in a second, but this is a kind of a cool product. It's a strap that goes on your wrist that can be used, if anyone's ever done an installation project yourself, dropping screws, dropping nails is a huge pain in the butt when you're up on a ladder trying to do things. This is a pretty cool little product that I found that makes, removes that problem. So when we talk about strategic PR, I want to start off by saying I have never seen good ROI on hiring a PR agency. And I love listening to a guy that was one of the co-founders of Y Combinator. He always talks about the same thing. Like, this is a horrible investment to hire an agency, but doing strategic PR yourself is very doable. You just have to have a process to do it. And what I have found is you're going to identify reporters that focus on the audience that you're trying to reach. You reach out to them with a headline. As an example here, handymen and women love this magnetic wrist strap, and it's only $20. Something that's like very clear that who you're calling out to. And then the value prop, anyone who's ever installed anything knows the agony of dropping a screw during the process. Our mag snap wristband ensures that will never happen, and it's only $20. So that's kind of your initial prompt that you're looking for. And then what I would do, I've drafted an email for you. So you're going to focus on reporters that, or maybe it's not even a reporter, maybe it's a blogger or whatever, but someone who focuses on DIY, home improvement, those types of things. Reach out. And I would have a subject like this, like, has your audience ever dropped a screw or nail? And you can come up with better headlines, use ChatGPT, write a million different ones. But you're developing a list of reporters that you want to reach out to. You send out your subject line to get opens. And then I just put together a very simple message. Your audience is undoubtedly familiar with the agony of losing a screw or bit during an installation process of some kind. Our MagSnap wristband ensures that will never happen to them again. It's only $20 and it's an amazing gift for the holidays. If you'd be open to featuring us in your Q4 listicle, we'd be happy to give your audience 20% off too. Something like that, because what's happening is these people on these sites are always in need of new ideas, ways they can generate revenue, get cool products for their audience. They're looking for this stuff. So your goal is to reach out to them. Obviously, you want to get deals in place. But on top of that, even if they say no, we already have our Q4 listicle, they're going to come back to you later because it's a cool product, right? And so your goal here is, number one, trying to get, I'll call it free or fixed cost sales that are coming in from these different sources. And then also you're going to be able to build relationships that you can reach out to later, whether they'll feature you at another time or you have new SKUs that come out. Your goal is to develop these relationships that you can leverage moving forward, whether once again they're going to give you free traffic or they're an affiliate where you're paying fixed costs per sale. You want to work with people who have great distribution, and this is a good way to go through and do this. The second one is product feature sites. I've highlighted the Grommet and Uncommon Goods here, but there's a bunch of different sites that you can go through. The first thing you want to do is identify sites that fit your product. So each site has a different criteria for brands and products they like to feature. Grommet is more techie, where sites like Goldbelly focus on food. Find the one or ones that fit you best, right? The goal is to find a series of products, websites, and once again, it can be affiliates, it can be product features, whatever those different pieces are. You want to find people that are trying to they're trying to aggregate things so their audience can go through and find things and buy. These are the types of sites that you're looking for. And you want to submit ASAP. So once you find the right sites, make sure you submit your application lickety split. It usually takes a week or two to get a response and get everything set up on the site. You may be late for Q4, but if you do it in November, maybe you're featured for Christmas, right? And so this is a kind of that time to go through and do these things. And so this is actually how I found MagSnap. I went on the Grommet. If you don't know, Giddy Up bought the Grommet. So they've turned this, it kind of got shut down for a while as a new product feature. They've re-enrolled it so that there's a lot of new products that are coming out. And so I went and found this, and you can see upvotes. They're giving 20% off for these orders. They have it integrated with Shopify, so you can just go through and purchase from here. But these are kind of those opportunities to go through and get features. You can see there's 2745 upvotes. This appeared really high on that list of gifts for dad, right? And so this is kind of that part of like, as you're working with companies trying to get featured on gifts for dad, home improvement, those types of things, this is where you're going to get some traction with product sales. And I just really liked the product, thought it was interesting because it's a problem that I run into. And this is what they go through and they set up with all of those companies. You can see there's bestsellers, everyday problem solvers, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of opportunities in here. The final play for you is proven angle iterations. So focusing on angles you know work. We want to spend the majority of our money in high cost times on things that we already know work. Less waste is important. Ad platforms prioritize serving new content over older content. And so we're trying to say, hey, we want to give you the new content you crave, but we also want to maximize our chances of success. So what we've done is go through and create an N8N workflow, which I'll show you here in just a second, that can produce these iterations at scale. What we do is we ingest our top performing ad scripts. We have an agent that writes the new script and generates a voiceover, and then we just send it over to our editors to produce and launch them. This has allowed us to remove creative strategy from the process entirely and just get more iterations of proven angles stockpiled so Ross has them for high cost times. So this is an example of the workflow I put together. Whenever we need more ads, I click the button, it executes a SQL query I wrote against our big query, and it goes through and identifies a certain number of angles that have met our criteria. We've gone through and set this up so it has all of our Google Drive links, and then we can see the performance stats. Once it runs this query, it's going to download all of these files. Then it'll send all of the files to ChatGPT to transcribe those recordings. Then it'll send it over to an agent that we've created a very specific prompt. We want you to take these transcripts and create a new version, staying in line with the general principle of the angle, but we want you to write something new. It's not just rewording, it's a new take on a proven angle. And then what it does, so it generates the script, and then it sends it over to 11 labs, and it gets a voiceover produced and sent back. And this whole process takes about 45 seconds to run to get 4 new voiceovers turned around. And we can have 10, 20, whatever we've got in here, but this is what would happen in about 45 seconds. And here's an example of how this has worked. So we have a long-standing parent angle. It's spent $2.5 million year to date, $5 million over the lifetime. But in August, we started to see the performance on this angle was dropping off. So we don't just want to lose $300,000 a month in ad spend. So we started to do this iteration process. And just to kind of call out, Ross and I were nervous about like, would this actually perform? Is this going to be valid? Is it going to produce sales, or is it just going to be AI slop? And as you can see, these started to perform and they've continued to ramp up. So at this time, it was 17% of the volume, but they've continued to ramp up and replace this $300,000 that's been trimmed down. So Ross, can you just give a really quick explanation of when we head into a higher cost environment, our mindset around inserting new angles and what it's meant to have a stockpile of proven iterations?
If anyone has been in the media buying seat in Q4, you know you're being squeezed. It's tough all the time. When you know that you have a bunch of ads that you can push in when you're getting squeezed that have been built off of something you already know has been proven, like there's certainty in the fact that we've got a high chance of being able to get something working here, because I know there's targets that have been set by clients. I need to push out volume. When I see things drop off, I don't have to worry. I don't have to go to the creative team and put on the emergency button. Please, help us out here. We've got stuff that is already being churned out. And I also want to just mention that this is not stuff that has just been recolored. It's not like going on a landing page and changing the color of the button. This is completely new net. Like these are same angles, same message, but everything has changed. The B-roll's changed. The voiceover's changed. So this is the same message, the same angle, but it's completely different, the videos and things like that. So these have been really, really great to have, because at any point in time when I'm being squeezed, I can go and pull out of the stockpile of these these iterations and push them in to help bump up that performance when we're being squeezed. So this has been really helpful.
And I think the other part that's important here is we try to focus on launching 6 new creatives a week, but we've been able to produce 15 a week. So for the last few months, we've been stockpiling 9 ad units every week in the background. So in these higher cost times when Ross is seeing performance drop, new ads not performing, what have you, he can just go supplant them to get more creatives out there so we can continue to fight back against these rising costs. And so maybe you have not had a stockpile built up. Now's the time that you can start doing it. Start at the beginning of November. You can have stuff in place as you get towards this higher period time and then keep doing it because you're going to experience higher costs again in December. So building up this stockpile now is really important. So those are the 3 plays I've got for you this month for a higher cost environment, these low risk actions, strategic PR outreach to get featured in publications and listicles for Q4, getting featured on product sites like Grommet, Uncommon Goods for everything in Q4. Start that process now so you can make sure you're in place, and then developing and deploying proven angle iterations. I hope these things help you fight the rising costs that you're undoubtedly going to see in the month of November and help you prepare for the next few months as well. Let us know if you have any questions. Once again, our goal here is to set you up for success in November, and we'll be back in the month of December to talk with you about the forecast for that. Talk soon. Thanks for watching this month's paid traffic forecast. Just by watching it, you and your team now know what to expect from your overall performance and the hot spots and cold spots you need to pay attention to over the next 30 days. If you want to be this prepared every month, there's 2 things you can do. First, you can subscribe or follow our social channels so this information shows up in your feed at the beginning of every month. Second, if you want the information early, you can subscribe to our free list where you'll get the information delivered to your inbox a day ahead of time. If there's something you think we can do to improve our monthly update, just drop us a comment below and let us know what you think that is. And finally, if you're a business owner looking for someone who can help you develop an advertising ecosystem that produces more sustainable, predictable scale, make sure to head over to decyphered.com/start. On that page, you'll understand how our process works and the steps you can take to see if we might be a good fit to help you. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next month.